Here we go. We're back on SEO Conspiracies.
Hey, Laurent, how are you doing today?
I'm good. And yourself?
Not so bad. Thank you very much. Not so bad.
And we're going back into the urban legends and the myth of SEO.
What are we on today?
Can we reverse engineer Google? Can we understand what the algorithm are made of?
Well, that's a big question, really. You can reverse engineer some bits of Google, I think, but no. Here's a thing that I think people miss when they're trying to analyze content on a page. They don't necessarily see, how that page fits into the world. So the link graph is a vital part of Google's look at the web, and so unless you happen to crawl the internet every day, then you can't make that work. I mean, fortunately, that's what Majestic does. So you have got a system that does that, but I think you couldn't do that yourself unless you had a huge amount of infrastructure. And I remember once on one of those business for you, freelance websites, someone putting up a job saying, I would like somebody to make me a tool like Majestic. I've got $500 to spend, which made for quite an interesting blog post on my part. I quite enjoyed that. So I think there's so many algorithms and things in there that properly reverse engineering it is pretty difficult. That said, I think that looking at signals and things within a set of results is a very good way of looking at how you could be better than that seed set of results. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Oh, it totally makes sense. But if we don't have, and we didn't have Majestic, if we only have $500, how do we do it? Well, the way we did it has a name, because there is a scientific method, right? The way to understand things. And there's also a bunch of people figure out that, for example, the title tag is the most powerful. And if enough people, say, okay, I think title tag is strong and maybe the strongest element on page, then most likely the title tag is the most important. If you have enough people, who agree on the thing. But,
yeah, the problem is none of them test. They just follow everybody else's ideas. So
exactly.
Very few SEOs do a proper test on these things. And I think the other thing is we have a tendency, it goes back to bias, isn't it? Human bias. We test things that we can see, but we don't understand the things that we can't. So I think the idea that anchor text was important was because Yahoo Site Explorer could show you the anchor text, or when that was around. So so there are things where you test this because we've got a way of measuring it, but you completely ignore the things that you couldn't test because you haven't got access to the data.
One of my favorite one is the latent semantic analysis or latent semantic indexing.
LSI, yeah.
Google bought a company called Applied Semantics, and everybody was like, okay, Google bought Applied Semantics, so they must do some LSA, LSI in search. Well, yes, they bought out this company, but that was for advertising. That's at the core of AdSense, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And once you dive into those algorithms, they are very heavy and they are so powerful that if Google put it into search, there would not be any content left on the web. Everything will be out. And the way we reverse engineer is usually you look at your website, your little vertical of queries, and you generalize. It's not the way it works. And especially a search engine made by an engineer is very different as a search engine from an SEO perspective.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely true. I think it's always going to be impossible to reverse engineer everything. But certainly our ability to run proper tests are pretty limited. It's hard to do proper A/B tests of an idea, and so. And also, fake news comes into it so much. Really, as soon as one person says something, either that person is respected and therefore everyone believes it, or that person isn't known, so everybody, knocks it on the head without really thinking about it. And I've been guilty of it, for sure. Of saying something as true without having a basis to say that on. Hopefully I'm getting older and I'm doing it less. But so much of this seems subjective.
And something could be true, then untrue, and then true again. For example, the rel nofollow. I did an experiment saying that Google was going beyond the rel nofollow. It was not following the guideline. Then couple of years, and that was like maybe 10 years, right at the beginning of the rel nofollow. I forgot when it came up. Then a couple of years later, did the test again, and Google was stopping, was not going beyond. And then apparently now it's going to crawl again past the nofollow. So, difficult. But
yeah, and another one is click-through rate. Some say click-through rate counts towards rankings, and some says it doesn't. But I think either way, it's not always the signal that you're actually trying to improve that is being measured by Google. It may be a different one. So Google may be measuring the quality of the dwell time, or they might be measuring the click-through rate, or they might be measuring the match between the users' preferences and the content on the page's preferences, which may be different for different users, and they may be associating different ideas. There's so many different ways that Google could be measuring that they can quite often say, no, we don't use click-through rate as a ranking factor. It doesn't mean to say that the click-through rate over time wouldn't be a ranking factor, wouldn't affect the rankings, because it doesn't have to be a direct correlation for it to have an effect.
Well, and on that specific example, there is a patent about what's called the pogo sticking, which is the click-through rate within the search engine result page, because people think it's about the analytics. Well, it makes more sense that within the search engine, but that patent is from Yahoo, which doesn't mean that Google is not using something similar. And from what I understand, speaking to some Googlers, that there were Googlers from Dublin, not from Mountain View.
Right.
And they were saying, yeah, we use that, but it's not as important as people think. It's more like a broad saying, okay, quality thing, people validating these results or not. But it's definitely, in my opinion, more about the click-through rate within the search engine result page than within the site, because it doesn't make sense. We spoke about Wikipedia. Wikipedia, people read one page and leave.
Yeah.
If you go to a travel website, you're going to visit 25 pages. It's going to take 35 minutes, but is it more relevant?
Who knows? Yeah. I think the pogo sticking as well. There's other things that can cause a pogo stick as well. So if your site is heavily reliant on that link from Le Monde, then Le Monde starts flipping in and doing its own A/B testing and taking your link away and stuff, you could get pogo sticking there. So there's other ways in which those kind of things could happen. I think another thing there is taking patents. So Bill Slawski is world's best expert on knowing about Google patents, and no doubt about it, and hats off and fantastic. But even as he says, just because there's a patent on it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what Google's doing. And also, when that patent comes out, that bears no relation to when any of that is used within the Google algorithms. I mean, those timelines are totally separate. The legal timeline for a patent coming out and the application timeline for a Google engineer putting something into a system, totally different. So, and I do see some people, Bill comes out and shows about another patent, and then everyone suddenly says, "Oh yeah, I saw this just last week," So people reverse engineer without correlation, without understanding the.
And when you know, I know more people at quant.com than at Google, but what I know for a fact that 99% of the stuff that they patent or they do in labs don't go into production. They have something at Google that's called a safety check, meaning in the lab, you could have a breakthrough revolution discovery. But if it's going to mess up what is already in place, they don't they don't use it. Because Google works and it's an old technology, and they pile up technology on top of another. So I don't know how many billions lines of codes and different languages and stuff. So whatever comes up is very important that it doesn't mess up with whatever is already in place.
You made an interesting point before we came on, that maybe it's not the algorithms you need to reverse engineer, it's the people. What did you mean by that?
Well, my bio reads search engine hacker, and any search engine, YouTube, LinkedIn, whatever. I like to understand how an algorithm works, but the way I do it is first I reverse engineer people, and this book, from John Battle, The Search, which I read maybe like 15 years ago, was a breakthrough for me because I started to understand the mindset of the people who made search engines. If you reverse the culture, the value, whatever that person wants to do by means of algorithms, it's more than enough. More than enough.
So now at the top of Google, there's a change at the top of Google, and do you think that signals a change in the philosophy of Google?
Well, yeah, I mean, now you know the answer because we spoke about it before. But
yeah, I'm just trying for you to not say, challenge me with the question. I knew what he was going to do, guys. He was going to ask me who's in charge of Google, and I'm trying to avoid the question so I don't have to not answer.
No, it's a tricky question because every time I ask it, nobody knows. Before it was Amit Singhal, right? Who made Google? People think that it's Larry Page and Sergey Brin. No, it's Eric Schmidt from a financial point of view and Amit Singhal from an algorithmic point of view. He rewrote the PageRank, he entered spam, blah, blah, all the... Amit Singhal is an analytic linguist, and everything is in order, everything is in the right place. Each one is value this, and everything is very analytical and from an automatic language processing point of view of a linguist. Then he left. And now in charge of Google, there is the former boss of MetaWeb. Google bought MetaWeb to create the knowledge graph. And the two guys are in charge of Google. And the other guy is from RungBrain, the machine learning team. So in my point of view, RungBrain is the boss of Google today. And not only Google, but all the search engines, machine learning is the boss. And
I think that's a great way to look at reverse engineering Google, because if you've got at the top of Google the machine learning and the semantic, the knowledge graph kind of people, the people that built those things, it tells us that Google is doubling down on the knowledge graph. It's doubling down on machine learning. It's doubling down on that approach, and it does mean that the knowledge graph is just going to get into every part of the Google system if it isn't already. And it just goes to show that the old school, keyword stuff, in as we've started on the series with, ain't gonna work no more, you know.
And again, it makes sense. It's logical. I mean, what is the knowledge graph? It's basically you put a number, ID number on everything that exists. So
Yep.
this is labeled with an ID. So again, you need context, because camera by itself doesn't mean anything. But if you surround this entity with enough
with a
context,
brand or whatever, then you get ideas. So, but I think what's interesting for SEOs is if you think of the knowledge graph as a massive encyclopedia, really, of ideas, of concepts and ideas, the danger that the optimization part of search engine optimization will be right now is us feeding the knowledge graph. We've got to feed, you know, that we've got something relevant about a Canon camera or a Pentax camera or whatever it is to feed into the knowledge graph. The optimization part is how do you get the knowledge graph to send that traffic or that human back to you, because it's currently amassing its own view of the world that doesn't need to go back to the data sources to provide the answer to the question for the user. And I think that's the optimization bit as we go in, you know, into the 20s and beyond the 20s, you know.
Very difficult.
Getting that, yeah, it's a one-way trip. But it won't be a one-way trip as long as you've got a unique proposition where, you know, if you want to stay in a hotel in, you know, this village here, you know, Google hasn't got the hotel. It's got to buy it from someone, but you know, better off being the owner of the hotel than maybe the booking.com in the middle.
True. I think people need to dissociate what they do for branding, marketing, and what they do from a commercial point of view to convert, because knowledge graph and all that sort of things is more about branding than really selling. I got a story. There's a salesman and a marketer that go out into a club. The salesman is going to go to the bar, buy a drink, go to a girl and say, "Hey, beauty, you want a drink?" No. Second girl, no. Third, but the seventh is going to say yes. That's a salesman, right? The marketer is going to reserve a table, buy a bottle, he's going to be dressed well, he's going to put himself in display. Both of them are going to achieve the objective, and both of them can work together, but it's just a different mindset. And people confuse each other. I think everything has a place, marketing, branding, and sales, but nowhere to do one or the other is the key here.
So here's my networking tip, and I learned this from my wife actually. If you're going to a networking event and you don't know very many people at that networking event, then the trick is to be the first one to arrive. Because if you're the first one to arrive, the organizer says, "Hello, who are you?" And then they introduce you to the next person.
Very nice.
And then you know one more person than the next person that comes in. So then you take over and say, "Hi, how you doing? This is so-and-so," and stuff. And then go down the line, bomb, 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 bomb. And you come out looking like the guy that knows everybody. But if you do know everybody, then absolutely. Just sit down, get your bottle of wine, and wait for people to come to you. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we digressed.
Sorry.
Yeah. But fine. Next topic is going to be Google updates. So it's a follow-up on this. But to finish up on reverse engineering Google, maybe you can find a little truth about your website, about your keywords, about something, a little trick on your little vertical, but don't try to generalize, right?
You're not going to be able to build Google.
Exactly. Okay.
See you next time.